The Cheating Death Podcast is a satirical program containing objective, direct, transparent, and blunt information about anything and everything under the sun. We are not religious, nor are we political, but we are a bit prodigious and perhaps a bit too analytical. You, dear listener, have made yourself a decision, and that is to embark upon the opening of the mind and the expression of the self. And this, of course, is why you are listening to the Cheating Death Podcast. On today's episode of the Cheating Death Podcast, we provide insight into the subject of history and why it matters, the overall idea, notion, and ultimately factual statistics that state emphatically that history is dictated by the winners. You, of course, are not going to hear the other side of the losers of World War I and the Treaty of Versailles. You are not going to hear the other side of World War II and the Nuremberg trials, because those individuals were cast down into the veritable pits of hell, into this land that we call Earth, and in the punishment realm to where they so shall deserved. But why does history matter, and why must we continue to cherish it rather than destroy it? We also provide you with an all-new top 5 list of chicken takeout options, because chicken is great at any rate, an all-new Annihilation Announcement, an all-new joke of the episode, and of course, dear listeners, much, much more. So give yourself an opportunity to relax today. Perhaps you are heading on down to grab yourself a snack and you have some Bluetooth headphones on and you're looking for something just to ease you through the meal. This is where you will find this program to be quite the steal. We shall move forward in a way to where you, dear listener, understand exactly where you are in this position in life. And you know full well by now that all you have to do is put your feet up, grab that iced coffee, because it is time for us to tell you how you can cheat death. This is your news anchor, the Cleric of Chaos, and this is your Annihilation Announcement. Over the decades of the past 100 years or so, we have come to understand that the amount of progress, innovation, and influence have grown exponentially throughout the course of time. We take into account exactly what can be done and what will be done through our words, through our actions, and through the various texts that we allow ourselves to review, to analyze, to hypothesize, and to ultimately provide attempted solutions for the calamities in which we deal with. You, yourself, listening to this podcast, seeing for yourself exactly how it is that history could be so bizarre and so peculiar but so beautiful all at once, we need not look outside of the mirror. For you see, when you look into that mirror, what are you seeing? A physical vessel? A soul that just so happens to rent a human body for a finite level of time? Or are you seeing the possibilities of your future, of the elements of change, and the effort that you are putting in to the life that you live? These questions are not to be answered by those in whom already have a litany of capability to inquire outside of their own worlds to see exactly what can be done, for these people already have the answers. They are already aware. But when you yourself are looking for truth and guidance and perspective, you need to listen to your instinct and your soul. We often make decisions that are based upon the most logical solution, and in some cases, when we're hungry, we just make decisions based on which food is the closest, the tastiest, and the best price. But in both of those situations, two things matter: your time to make that decision and the end result. You, dear listener, are a hard-working person who does everything that they possibly can to make the most out of each and every single day. But rest assured that when you find yourself in a position to where you are ultimately asking yourself more questions than answering, you are in a good spot. Never let the world dampen your interest. Never let the rain snuff out your spark. Always do what you can. Rise above any situation. And remember, you have it within you to take care of business. This has been your news anchor, the Cleric of Chaos. And this, dear listeners, has been your Annihilation Announcement. Willkommen, 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 meine Freunde. Guten Morgen, guten Tage und eine gute Nacht. Ist deine Reisende, deine Ausländer, deine Allesfresser, deine Schauspieler, deine Künstler. Ich vermehren das Licht, Ost und heiter. Mein Herz ist nicht gebrochen und ich bin bereit. Heute ist eine schöne Tage. Today, dear listeners, we are going to take a dive down to understanding why war never changes and why history matters. When we take into account what the elements of war often embody and encapsulate, we have to ask ourselves three questions. 1. What is the reason for the conflict? 2. How dire is the situation that weapons need to be introduced? And 3. What are the moral values of each side? For when you take into account that each side of war, each side of a particular conflict, no one ever views themselves as the enemy or the antagonist. No one ever views themselves as being the wrong ones or being the individuals in whom are on the wrong side of history. But history itself has taught us that in war there are winners and there are losers. And even on the winning side, there will be significant amounts of loss. The only common denominator when it comes to history and war are that loss is not only essential, but it is guaranteed. When one purveys or predicates a sense of attitude, regulation, draconian issues, and there is a significant conflict from a moral perspective, from a verbal perspective, from a historical angle. This is where, more often than not, the wars that we have come to know will come to be physical conflicts. And that physical conflict within itself is manifested and embodied over years, decades of emotional and mental duress. Conflict between two parties that just cannot and flat out will not agree. We take into account the Norman invasion of 1066 when the Britons were taken for quite the ride as it pertained to their idea that they would be forevermore dwelling within the confines of what is now called the United Kingdom. But for even decades and centuries before the Norman invasion of 1066, the British island had been home to the Celts, had been home to the Scots, had been home to the Welsh, and had been home to many a people in whom were merely looking to make their lives a little bit more resplendent, to try to avoid adverse reactions and or issues to war. But we as people, we are far from the perfect organism that we like to think we are. You take into account why and how World War I started, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, and understanding that it wasn't just because of the political element nor the religious element of what the Archduke represented. No, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was because the Black Hand, which was the group based out of Serbia responsible for the assassination, had made it so empirically evident that they thought that their way of the world was more just, was more righteous than that of what was currently being purveyed through lower Eastern Europe at the time. So you have a radical group over 112 years ago who believes that their mission is correct, who believes that they are in the right, and as such they take the first step, and that unleashes a complete chain of disaster. Austria, completely decimated and embarrassed and humiliated, this took place. Germany, of course, being right in the crosshairs and right in the crossfire, being directly next to Austria, had no choice but to align with the Austrian individuals, the military, and as such, there were further developments upon Eastern Europe that made it so that World War I became a global conflict. This is not to be said that any of the efforts to stop World War I were not put in place. Oh, dear no. Most of Europe was absolutely against the notion of participating in such a grand affair. There's a reason why they call it the Great War. Many casualties were lost. A lot of lives were impacted. People were disabled, mutilated, disconfigured, and completely changed for the rest of their lives and for several generations thereafter. So much so that 25 years later, when World War II began, people were already abundantly aware of the hell, of the chaos, of the proverbial morality war to be waged. In times of treachery and turmoil, we turn to truth to tell us the tale. These situations, when we embody and when we encapsulate exactly why history is important and why it matters, is because if we continue to let history be won and written by those in whose only stronghold is a financial benefit and more significant network connections to where one can be purged or erased, a la the Joseph Stalin regime from the 1920s all the way through the 1950s, understand this. We are in danger of losing our very livelihoods, our very way of being, our very way of being able to read and tell stories to future generations. Some of you are very well aware that Tartaria was not only beautiful and exceptional technological part of our species, but that it has almost been completely eradicated from the point of all historical texts, and anyone who mentions it is considered crazy, because there are no legitimate, quote-unquote, authorized, annotated, and approved texts about Tartaria. Now, this is important, because Tartaria was a technological civilization that happened less than 500 years ago. Free energy, the use of electricity, the use of indoor plumbing, and several other elements that we have come to take for granted were already invented 500 to 700 years ago. But yet, when Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla, and many other engineers, scientists, extraordinary human beings, Sir Isaac Newton even to a degree, individuals in whom discovered, quote-unquote, mathematical elements and formulaic equations that would change the very foundation of life. These questions had already been answered centuries before, but the reason it was buried is because, in the end, no government, no overseer wants its citizens to have freedom, power, communication, assembly. Even as we record this podcast, note, dear listener, that we're very well aware that the information that we provide you is not only direct, transparent, and objective, but we're also aware that tucked into a corner in a high-rise office in New York City or Toronto, Ontario, Chicago, Illinois, Atlanta, Georgia, Los Angeles, California, or somewhere in Eastern Europe, there's somebody who's listening to this podcast with a cigarette in their hand, an ashtray on their table, and a nice view of a body of water, saying, he'd better not get too close to the sun. And we're very well aware of that, because when you take into account just how important history is and how much it matters to preserve it, we begin to understand that even the most basic human being is not remembered 100 years after their death. We remember that the biggest desire among most humans, though they will never vocalize it, is that they do not wish to be forgotten. So when you take your next deep dive down a rabbit hole of a historical interest, do your best to preserve it. And until next time, dear listeners, thank you for tuning in today. Take care of yourselves and each other. At the top of today's episode, we promised you a list of our top 5 favorite chicken takeout options, and we shall not disappoint, because when it comes to food, we take that quite seriously. Coming in at number 5, we have the standard Popeyes family meal. Yes, we're talking about the original recipe, as well as some popcorn chicken and some absolutely delectable tenders with the fries, with the coleslaw, and with the macaroni and cheese. One of the best staples for chicken takeout. Coming in at number 4, we have a Toronto staple coming in at that lovely section of Augusta Avenue known as Knockout Chicken. Yes, the regular guys who have the $20 platter specials. Outstanding delivery, outstanding quality, and exceptional advertisement. You can get 4 chicken wings, 2 chicken sandwiches, 2 bottles of water, and a large thing of French fries for just $20. Give them a visit today. Coming in at number 3, we of course have the outstanding favorite original recipe, KFC chicken bucket. Coming in at number 2, we have a surprise one coming in clutch, and that is the McDonald's grilled chicken and bacon wrap. And coming in at number 1, dear listeners, does it surprise you in any way, shape, or form to hear that the best Chimkin sandwich comes from Dave's Hot Chicken, the Nashville style that is completely annihilating the scene? Give yourself an opportunity to try the Nashville Hot Chicken sandwich today. What is your top 5 chicken places and takeout options? Feel free to email us at thecheatingdeathpodcast@gmail.com. Today's joke has been brought to you by the Cleric of Chaos. You know, throughout the course of life, you meet many people. They're going to tell you different things, like, I like bananas, or I don't mind late night drives. But lately, I've been told that I'm a pretty good judge of character, and the more I think about it, it's actually been a pretty steady constant throughout my life. And as good as that makes me feel, the only thing that comes to my mind is a good judge of character. Goodness gracious, I'm hardly qualified to be a criminal defense attorney. Over the decades and centuries, there have been plenty of examples as to how and why the dictation of history and who writes it matters. We look at the past 500 years, from the medieval times to the Renaissance to the Industrial Revolution to the advent of the 8-hour workday a la Henry Ford in the early 1900s, and now our postmodern situation where even those who are working 60 hours a week are still barely struggling to make ends meet. Why does history matter in this respect? It's quite simple. Those in whom choose to forget history will repeat the mistakes it has attempted to teach. We often look at ourselves as being essential, numerous, and voluminous to this planet, but we are but a glitch in the system. We do not see exactly how lucky we are and how fortunate we are to be walking, living, existing, breathing, functioning in this current age and time. Why is that? It's because the vast majority of individuals in whom have controlled history throughout the eons have made it quite clear. They do not care for the peasantry. They do not care for the pedantic attitudes and behaviors of those in whom are trying to correct them and set them on the proverbial right course. No, history is often written by the winners because in the end, you are not going to take advice from somebody who lost a war. You are not going to want to move in a direction that somebody in whom is on the losing side has taken, and for very good reason. But the moment that we start to erase history, whether it is bad or good, is the moment that we start to really see exactly how depraved, how deplorable, and how despicable that humanity can be during these particular times. We often stretch ourselves far too thin and ask ourselves way too much, way too many questions. But it is in these times when we are ruminating, when we are reflecting, when we are trying to identify exactly what specifically gets us to that point, that we have already done what we possibly can to reach a level to where we are going to be able to write our own histories, our own stories, and the risk of it being snuffed out may reduce depending on the time, as well as depending on the caliber, quote-unquote, of person that you are. We take for granted the lessons that we learned in elementary school, in secondary school, and for those of us in whom have been through post-secondary studies, we take that for granted too. More often than not, especially in North America, post-secondary education is a means to an end. Historically speaking, the most popular universities are the ones that get the most grants and the ones that partake in the most municipal activity and collaboration. The ones that are plastering their faces and their names everywhere as if it is a new Chanel bag. What we fail to see is that when it comes to North American post-secondary education and its implementation of historical effort, it is very dire. Today, in the modern times, we have seen more students go in and out of university, going in completely happy and whimsical and coming out completely exhausted and just exasperated at the state of everything. Why does this happen? Simple. Because those 4 years, they didn't necessarily teach you new skills. They just taught you how to be more regimented. They taught you how to be more disciplined, how to work within a schedule, how to configure situations and solutions so that the people around you are not inconvenienced. This is not a way to teach people how to live, how to work, how to function. This is a way to control people. As such, the way with history. When history is written by the winners, we must not ignore the information that was attempted to be put forth by those in whom have fallen. Whenever you pick up a history book or whenever you dive down a history rabbit hole on YouTube, remember this. Do what you can to remain objective. Find the source that speaks to you, but always leave a mind open for another angle, another view, another perspective. But of course, I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. And until next time, dear listeners, thank you for tuning in today. Take care of yourselves and each other. The Cheating Death Podcast is brought to you by Nachdem Leben CRDVC, Cleric of Chaos, and where you can find all podcasts on all platforms. If you would like to support the program, you may do so by purchasing some merchandise, buying a cameo, or buying us a coffee. The link's in the episode's description. Please remember to follow all of our talented co-producers, extraordinary artists, comedians, and talents. Instagram.com/AlexBurkeComedy, Instagram.com/Damon.Charles, Instagram.com/DarrenBurkeComedy, Instagram.com/Backroom Comedy Club, and of course, dear listeners, Instagram.com/hot.mama.scholar. We are looking at quite a few talented artists in this particular field, and if you would like to follow each and every single one of them, we suggest you do, following the links in the episodes and in the podcast description. We are trying to reach 100 subscribers on our YouTube before the end of the summer, at the end of September, so if you'd like to follow, do so at youtube.com/@Cleric of Chaos and follow all of our social media. If you or anyone you know is experiencing psychiatric duress, emergency, substance abuse withdrawal, gambling addiction, domestic violence, or much more, please visit the telephone numbers listed in the episode's podcast description as well. If you or anyone you know are looking at adopting a playful puppy or a cute kitten, please visit your local animal adoption rescue center, for they are in dire need of your support as well. Please, if you are looking for a great meal downtown Toronto, visit 10 College Street at the W Burger Bar every day between 11 a.m. and 2 a.m. Lunch specials from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. An excellent happy hour between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. and the best damn fish bowls in town. 10 College Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And Dundas Shawarma at 768 Dundas Street West in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Open daily from 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. And of course, if you are looking for your next beautiful and your next bright meal that is going to come in the form of an ample quantity of delicious sauces, soups, and flavors, please visit Leo Show in downtown Toronto on Spadina Avenue in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Dear listeners, we understand that your life is not something that you should take lightly. However, there is plenty of opportunity for each of us to embark upon a road that leads us to our reward, as long as we are willing to put in the work, the effort, and the time. Nothing can or will stop you from achieving what you set out to accomplish. And remember, we're pulling for you. We're all in this together.